They didn't leave because they stopped caring. They left because you stopped respecting yourself. Let that one hit deep, my friends. Don't brush it off. Let it burn a little. Because truth, it's not always soft. Sometimes it stings. And sometimes the pain isn't coming from what they did, but from what you allowed. You see, we love to tell ourselves stories. That they ghosted us because they were scared of real love. That they pulled away because they didn't know how to handle deep connection. That they left because they had commitment issues. Nah, let's break that lie today. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me. Because this message, it's not just for your ears, it's for your soul. Now, hey folks, imagine this. You're holding a flower, soft, beautiful, delicate, but you're gripping it too tight, not because you want to crush it, but because you're afraid of losing it. And the harder you squeeze, the more petals fall, until one day, it's just a broken stem in your hand, and you're standing there wondering what happened. That flower didn't wilt because it stopped blooming. It wilted because your fear killed it. That's what happens in dating too. You think you're loving them, but what you're really doing is holding on too tight, texting too much, explaining too often, apologizing for things you didn't even do, changing who you are just to keep someone around who was never meant to stay. And then you wonder why they started pulling away. My friends, people don't just vanish, not the ones who felt safe. They leave when your energy starts to feel heavy, when your presence becomes a performance, when love starts to look more like pressure than peace. We think we're giving, but really, we're begging. Marcus Aurelius said, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." And yet, here we are, bending backwards, losing ourselves in the name of love. But love that costs you isn't love. It's emotional debt, and it always ends in pain. Let me say something a little hard here. Sometimes, it's not that they're abandoning you. It's that you've been abandoning yourself for so long, they just followed your lead. You ignored your needs. You kept saying yes when your soul was screaming no. You forgave too quickly, explained too often, and stayed too long. And the worst part, you thought that was strength. You thought that was loyalty. But really, it was fear wearing a pretty disguise. Imagine you're dancing. At first, it's smooth, effortless, but then one person starts trying too hard, overstepping, moving off beat, second-guessing every step. The rhythm dies. The connection fades. Not because the song changed, but because one partner stopped trusting themselves. That's what you've been doing. You keep overcorrecting, overgiving, overloving, hoping that somehow, if you just do enough, they'll stay. But you forgot the most important thing. You were already enough. You don't need to shrink to be loved. You don't need to chase to be chosen. You don't need to twist yourself into knots just to feel seen. So today, we stop chasing. Today, we stop explaining. Today, we look in the mirror and say, if I lose myself to keep someone, I've already lost them. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And don't forget, smash that like button, subscribe for more truth like this, and stay with me, because we're just getting started. Number 1, you say you're giving, but you're bleeding. Let that one hit you in the chest, my friends. Not soft, not gentle. Let it hurt a little. Because sometimes the truth isn't a whisper, it's a wake-up call. You thought you were loving them, showing up, being consistent, proving your heart. But deep down, you weren't giving from fullness. You were pouring from fear. You weren't loving from a healed place. You were bleeding out and calling it affection. So folks, imagine this. You're standing in a desert, holding a small, cracked bowl of water. Someone you care about is thirsty. So what do? You keep handing them water, cup after cup. Even when your bowl is almost empty, even when your own lips are dry, you keep giving. But here's the problem. Your bowl is cracked. Every drop you pour for them is spilling out of you. You're not replenishing. You're not resting. You're not even checking if you have anything left. You just keep giving, hoping they'll stay, hoping they'll see your effort, hoping they'll finally say, "Wow, no one's ever loved me like this." But that's not what happens, is it? They don't stay. They don't say thank you. They just keep taking. Not because they're cruel, but because you taught them that you don't need anything in return. You see, this is what fear does. It disguises itself as love. It says, if I just give enough, they won't leave. If I show them I'll do anything, they'll stay. If I don't complain, if I don't ask for too much, if I keep showing up, they'll love me back. But love, real love, doesn't need to be bought with sacrifice. And I know what you're thinking right now. But if I don't give, they'll leave. If I stop showing up, won't they think I don't care? If I stop proving myself, what if they find someone who tries harder? Let me tell you something hard. They're not leaving because you stopped giving. They're leaving because you never stopped. Because your giving became guilt. Your love became labor. Your heart became a performance. And nobody wants to feel like they're being emotionally babysat. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not given to you to command their minds." But that's exactly what we try to do, isn't it? We try to win love through emotional overcompensation. We think if we just do more, we'll be enough. But more isn't the answer when the giving comes from a place of emptiness. And here's the thing they never told you, my friends. When love is forced, it starts to feel like a burden. Not just to you, but to them too. They feel your anxiety in every message. They sense your desperation in every just checking in. They read between the lines of your "I'm fine" texts. And that energy, it doesn't make them feel safe. It makes them feel trapped. You didn't mean to do that. You were just scared. You were trying to hold on before it slipped away. But that's what fear does. It makes you chase instead of attract. It makes you explain instead of express. It makes you bleed and call it beautiful. Let's be real for a second. Giving isn't the problem. Giving is beautiful when it comes from overflow. But when it comes from emptiness, it becomes a transaction. You start keeping score. You start wondering why they don't appreciate you. You start feeling unseen, unloved, unreciprocated. And that's when the resentment begins. Because somewhere deep down, you expected them to fill you in return. But they didn't. Not because they didn't care, but because they were never meant to carry what you were supposed to give to yourself. You cannot hand someone your worth and expect them to protect it better than you. You cannot bleed for someone and call it connection. You cannot exhaust yourself and expect them to say thank you for your sacrifice. That's not love. That's emotional survival. And it will never feel like peace. So here's what I want you to do, my friend. I want you to take a breath, a real one. And say this to yourself, even if your voice shakes. I don't need to prove my love. I just need to protect my peace. Because if they only love you when you're bleeding, That's not love. That's dependency. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to give from a place of strength, to love from a place of wholeness, to offer your heart not as a desperate plea, but as a powerful choice. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to pull back when you've been taught that love means effort. It's hard to stop giving when your identity was built on self-sacrifice. It's hard to choose yourself when all you've ever done is choose them. But hard doesn't mean impossible. And pain, that's just the price of transformation. You're not selfish for wanting to be full before you give. You're not cold for pulling back. You're not broken for needing rest. You're just human, and humans need balance. So let's stop pretending that love should drain you. Let's stop calling burnout loyalty. Let's stop bleeding and calling it beautiful. Say it with me. I protect my peace. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And stay with me, because what's coming next, oh, it gets even deeper. We're about to talk about something nobody wants to admit. They're not pulling away because they don't care. They're pulling away because they're starving for something you stopped giving the moment you stopped loving yourself. Let's go. Number 2. They're leaving because they're starving. In trying to give them everything, you gave them nothing real. Let that one hit where it hurts, my friends, because sometimes the truth doesn't whisper, it punches. And here's a truth most won't say out loud. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because you weren't you anymore. You see, when you constantly sacrifice your own needs, your voice, your identity, thinking it'll make the other person stay, you don't become their safe space. You become a void, a blank space where your personality used to be, a soft yes when your soul was screaming no, a constant flow of effort without a backbone to hold it up. And you think you're offering them love, but to them, it feels like pressure. It feels like they're loving a shadow, like they're in a relationship with a version of you that's always bending, always adjusting, always hiding. They're not leaving because they want someone better. They're leaving because they're starving for something real. So folks, imagine sitting down at a restaurant. The waiter keeps bringing you plates, dish after dish, piling them high, smiling as if he's doing you a favor. But the food, it has no flavor. It looks beautiful, but it's hollow. No substance, no soul, just decoration. After a while, you don't feel full. You feel overwhelmed, confused, tired. That's what emotional overgiving does to people. You're serving so much, but nothing's nourishing. Nothing feels grounded. And they don't know how to tell you that, so they slowly back away. They pull away, not because they're ungrateful, but because they can't breathe around someone who's losing themselves trying to be loved. And I know what you're thinking, but I was just trying to show how much I care. If I stop giving, won't they think I don't love them? Isn't love about sacrifice? Yeah, but not self-destruction. Not when the sacrifice means killing off the parts of yourself that made them fall for you in the first place. You were afraid of losing them. So you gave more, said yes more, held back more. But in doing so, you lost the spark, the edge, the authenticity, the thing that made you you. People fall in love with your essence, your truth, your voice, your quirks, your opinions. And when you start diluting that to keep someone, you're feeding them something that looks like love, but tastes like absence. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Stop trying to perform love. Be love, but real love. strong love. Love with roots, not just branches. Because people don't want a partner who gives them everything while giving nothing to themselves. They want someone who's alive, someone who's whole, someone who's anchored in their truth, even when the waves come crashing. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be honest when you fear rejection. It's hard to set boundaries when you think love means never saying no. It's hard to show up as your full self when every past version of love taught you that you had to shrink to stay. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. They didn't need all your doing. They needed your being, your presence, your stability, your truth. And when you lost that, they felt the shift. They may not have had the words, but they felt the hollowness. And that's when they started slipping away. You thought they were leaving because you weren't trying hard enough. But the truth is, you were trying too hard to be someone you're not. So today, let's change that. Let's stop feeding people empty effort. Let's stop over-delivering from a place of fear. Let's start showing up as our real selves, imperfect, grounded, alive. Because when you're real, you give them something to hold on to, not a performance, not a mask, not a role, but you. Say it with me. I will show up real. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And stay with me, because what's next? It's the truth most people run from. Sometimes it's not what you said. It's what you felt about yourself, silently, that pushed them away. Let's talk about that. Number 3, unspoken insecurity pushes people away. Energy doesn't lie, and your insecurity walks in before you do. Let that one echo inside you for a second, because this isn't about the words you say, my friends. It's about the feeling you bring, the energy you carry when you walk into the room, the invisible weight that wraps itself around your presence. Even before you open your mouth, you didn't have to say you were afraid. You didn't have to text a paragraph explaining your fear of being left. You didn't have to ask, "Are we okay?" after every short reply. They felt it, all of it, the anxiety, the doubt, the fear that one wrong move would make them leave, the fear that maybe you're not enough. And that energy, it doesn't whisper, it shouts. People can feel when your self-worth is dangling in their hands. And while they may care about you, that kind of emotional weight becomes too much over time. It doesn't feel like love anymore. It feels like pressure. Imagine this with me for a moment. Imagine someone handing you a fragile glass sculpture and saying, "This is everything to me. Please don't drop it. Please don't break it. Please be careful. My happiness depends on how you hold this." How would you feel? Scared? Responsible? Maybe even annoyed? That's what emotional insecurity does in relationships. It silently tells the other person, "My peace depends on you. My confidence depends on how much you reply. My worth depends on how often you choose me." And no matter how well-meaning you are, that energy is overwhelming. It doesn't give them freedom. It gives them a job. Love is supposed to breathe, to flow, to feel free. But insecurity grips tight. It holds too close. It watches too hard. It waits for proof. It overanalyzes every delay, every tone, every pause in the conversation, like it's a courtroom cross-examination. And no one wants to feel like they're on trial, even if you're not saying it out loud. Because unspoken insecurity isn't quiet. It speaks through body language. It speaks through constant reassurance seeking. It speaks through the way you second-guess your every move and theirs. You might be thinking right now, but I just care deeply. I've been hurt before. I'm scared of it happening again. If I don't check in, won't they think I'm distant? And listen, I get it. I really do. When your heart has been broken, you start to build your next connection on top of fear. You become hyper-aware. You start watching for signs. You start preparing for disappointment even before anything goes wrong. And that's not because you're weak, it's because you're wounded. But here's the thing. People aren't looking to date your past. They're looking to connect with your present. And when your present is haunted by every scar, every betrayal, every unanswered text from your last heartbreak, you're not really giving them you. You're giving them a version of you that's trying to prevent pain, not create peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Not in their replies, not in their attention, not in how many times they choose you in a week. Within you. Because here's the hard truth. They can't make you feel secure if you're still handing them the power to make or break you. That's not their job. That's your healing. So the next time you feel that wave of anxiety creeping in, that urge to text for reassurance, to double-check their tone, to send a follow-up, just making sure we're good message, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I trust the connection or because I don't trust myself? Because insecurity will always feel like hunger, and no one wants to date someone who's starving for validation. That kind of neediness doesn't feel romantic. It feels unsafe. It makes people feel like they can't have a bad day, can't take a breath, can't have space, because if they do, you'll spiral. And even if they care deeply for you, they'll eventually feel exhausted. Not because you're unlovable, but because you keep putting your worth in their hands and calling it closeness. So what's the move? Start grounding your worth in something unshakable. Start choosing peace, even in uncertainty. Start showing up like someone who is already whole, because you are. You're not here to beg for reassurance. You're here to offer presence, not pressure. And the moment you stop asking them to carry your worth, you set both of you free. Say it with me. My peace is mine. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them, show yourself, show the world, and stay with me, because next, we're stepping into the patterns you didn't even know were chasing people away. The over-explaining, the over-giving, the overthinking. It's time to stop drowning in effort and start rising in worth. Let's go. Number 4. You're over-explaining, over-giving, overthinking. The more you chase reassurance, the more they question the connection. And that one might sting a little, my friends, but let it. Let it settle into your chest and crack something open. Because here's the truth most people won't tell you. That long message you sent, the third paragraph wasn't needed. That explanation you gave for why you said what you said, that apology for just having feelings, opinions, needs, it wasn't love. It was fear, wearing effort like a disguise. And let me say this loud, fear doesn't make love stronger, it makes it suffocating. You didn't mean to come off that way. You were just trying to be clear. You were trying to make sure nothing got misunderstood. You were trying to smooth out every wrinkle in the connection before it turned into a tear. But what you didn't realize is that you were slowly unraveling it yourself. You see, when you start over-explaining everything you do, everything you feel, everything you say, it doesn't make them feel safe. It makes them feel smothered. Because behind all that explaining is one silent message screaming underneath, "Please don't leave me." And that's not connection. That's a cry for safety. Imagine this, folks. You're walking through a gallery, admiring a painting. It's bold, powerful, it speaks for itself. And then suddenly, the artist walks up and starts telling you what every brushstroke means. Every corner, every shadow, every line. Won't stop talking, won't stop explaining. Eventually, it ruins the experience. You can't see the painting anymore. You can only hear the artist's insecurity. That's what over-explaining does in relationships. You become noise, not presence, not peace, just noise. And instead of letting the connection breathe, you're trying to narrate every breath. And I get it. Silence is scary. Not knowing where someone stands, terrifying. Feeling like something is off and not being able to fix it immediately. Pure anxiety. But you know what's even scarier? Over-explaining your existence until you forget who you are. Trying so hard to make them feel comfortable that you make yourself small. Overgiving what wasn't asked for. Overthinking what was never wrong. Because the moment you start trying to convince someone to love you, you've already forgotten your worth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." And yet, how many times have you sent that message, said that apology, made that offer, just to calm your own panic? Not because it felt true, but because it felt safer than silence. But love doesn't come with an instruction manual. It doesn't need a presentation. It doesn't need bullet points and disclaimers and nervous texts that start with, "Sorry if this sounds crazy," but it needs presence. It needs confidence. It needs a you who knows they are enough without explanation. And let's be honest, this kind of over-effort isn't just exhausting for them. It's draining you too. You're tired of crafting the perfect text, tired of replaying every conversation in your mind, tired of feeling like you're too much and not enough at the same time. And all that energy, you could have been giving it to yourself. You could have been resting instead of rationalizing. You could have been living instead of overthinking. You could have been attracting instead of chasing. But the moment you step into fear, you start trying to earn what should have come naturally. And here's the wild part. They never asked you to try so hard. You just assumed you had to. You assumed that love needed constant management, that connection needed constant fixing, that if you didn't explain, they'd misunderstand and leave. But the right person doesn't leave because you were quiet one day. The right person doesn't run because you didn't reply with a novel. The right person feels your energy, and they rest in it. So stop narrating your worth. Stop trying to talk them into loving you. Stop over-explaining your heart like it's a mistake you're trying to justify. Start standing still in your truth. Start believing that you can be seen without a sales pitch. Start understanding that love doesn't need convincing, it needs confidence. Say it with me. I am enough without explaining. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And stay with me, because next we're going to break the biggest lie of them all, that lowering your standards makes you more lovable. We're going deep into the damage of being too easygoing, and why that softness they once admired became the reason they lost respect. Let's go. Number 5. Your lack of standards is the red flag. If you don't respect your own boundaries, neither will they. Let that one slap a little, my friends, because too many of us confuse kindness with weakness. We confuse being chill with being silent. We confuse flexibility with invisibility. You thought being easygoing made you unforgettable. You thought saying it's fine would make them stay. You thought being the one who never caused drama would make them love you harder. But here's the brutal truth. You weren't showing them how lovable you are. You were showing them how little you require, and they believed you. Every time you accepted the bare minimum and smiled. Every time you let them cancel plans last minute and said, "No worries." Every time they went cold and you still reached out first. You were teaching them that they didn't have to try. You didn't realize it at the time. You thought you were being patient. You thought you were giving grace. You thought that if you were just understanding enough, eventually they'd see your worth and meet you there. But people don't rise to meet your potential. They settle into the standard you allow. And every time you stayed silent when you should have spoken up. Every time you stayed when you should have walked away. Every time you said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. You told them, "This is enough for me," even when it wasn't. Even when you cried after. Even when your soul screamed, "You deserve better." But you stayed, and they learned. They learned they could give you breadcrumbs and still keep your loyalty. They learned they could disrespect you in small, subtle ways, and you'd never call it out. They learned they never had to fully show up, because you were doing all the showing up for both of you. And let's be real, that didn't make them love you more. It made them comfortable. Comfortable enough to slack. Comfortable enough to stop trying. Comfortable enough to disrespect you. Maybe not in big, explosive ways, but in those slow drip moments that erode a connection from the inside out. And what happened to you? You started feeling bitter. You started wondering why you weren't enough. You started thinking maybe you had to give more, love harder, lower the bar just a little further. But here's the twist, my friends. You weren't too much. You were never too much. You were too silent about your standards, too soft with your boundaries, too willing to carry the entire relationship on your back. And over time, the resentment built, quietly, like poison. Not just in you, but in them too. Because deep down, even they could feel that the relationship was imbalanced, that they were taking more than they were giving, that they had stopped trying, and somehow you let it happen. And nobody respects what they don't have to work for. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You should be strict with yourself and tolerant with others." But some of us flipped that. We became strict with ourselves and too tolerant with others. We made excuses for their behavior. We romanticized their inconsistency. We called their carelessness just who they are. And we shrank, thinking that would save the connection. But love built on lowered standards is not love. It's survival. And survival doesn't feel like peace. It feels like constant negotiation. It feels like trying to hold on to something that's already slipping through your fingers because you never asked it to stand still. And I get it. I know what you're thinking. But if I raise my standards, won't I end up alone? If I speak up, what if they leave? If I start saying no, what if no one stays? Let me tell you something hard, but freeing. Anyone who leaves because you finally respected yourself was never really with you to begin with. They were with the version of you that tolerated too much, gave too much, sacrificed too much. And that version, she's tired, he's exhausted, and they're done. So here's your turning point. Stop being easy to love by being hard on yourself. Stop mistaking silence for strength. Stop training people to treat you like an option by never acting like a priority. You're not cold for setting boundaries. You're not selfish for asking for effort. You're not dramatic for wanting clarity. You're finally becoming the version of you who doesn't need to beg for the bare minimum. Say it with me. My standards are staying high. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And stay with me, because next we're going even deeper. We're about to talk about the biggest lie that kills real connection. That love has to be hard, forced, or earned. Spoiler alert, the right one never needs to be chased. Let's go. Number 6. Real love doesn't need to be forced. The more you force it, the more it fades. Let that sit in your chest for a moment, my friends. Not in your mind, your chest. Let it land where the ache has been living. Because some of you are exhausted right now, not from being unloved, but from trying so damn hard to make love happen. You don't have to sell yourself to someone who's right for you. You don't have to beg, chase, overperform, or shrink. You don't have to keep adjusting your volume just to be heard. Because real love doesn't need to be forced, it needs to be felt. And if you have to chase it constantly, if you have to prove your value daily, if you have to perform perfection just to be chosen, that's not love, that's emotional labor. And one day, that labor will cost you your self-worth. Let's be honest. Some of you are trying to convince someone to love you, not love you back, just love you at all. You're sending long messages. You're walking on eggshells. You're doing emotional backflips, hoping maybe this time they'll finally see how good you are. But the truth? They already saw you. They just didn't choose you. And instead of walking away, you turned up the effort. So folks, imagine this. You're in a store, trying on shoes. One pair feels too tight, but you keep forcing your foot in. You walk around in pain, telling yourself, maybe I just need to break them in. Maybe they'll stretch. Maybe it's me. But shoes that fit don't need to be broken in. They feel right from the moment you put them on. And the same goes for people. If you have to constantly convince someone to stay, that's not your person. That's your pattern. A pattern of proving, a pattern of pleasing, a pattern of shrinking. And let's call it out, this earn your place mentality. It's trauma. It's past wounds whispering, you're only lovable when you over-deliver. But real love says, you're enough as you are. It doesn't ask you to hustle. It doesn't keep you on edge. It doesn't come and go depending on your performance. And I know what you might be thinking right now. But I just care so much. I can't lose them. If I stop trying, they'll disappear. Let me say something hard but freeing. If your silence makes them disappear, they were already halfway gone. You were just making enough noise to cover the distance. Marcus Aurelius said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." And maybe the obstacle here is your own forcing. Because the moment you let go of trying, fixing, performing, is the moment you make space for the right one to show up. Not someone you have to chase, but someone who chooses you without hesitation. You don't need to keep twisting yourself into a version of love they understand. You don't need to become palatable to be kept. You don't need to fight to be noticed. You deserve to be seen without shouting. But here's what happens when you force things for too long. You become resentful. You stop recognizing yourself. You lose the joy in giving because everything feels like a transaction. You give love hoping for return, and when you don't get it, you feel unworthy. But you were never unworthy. You were just giving to the wrong person. The right one won't ask you to prove. The right one won't make you question your place. The right one won't feel like a performance you're always one mistake away from failing. They'll hold you. They'll see you. They'll choose you, not because of how well you perform, but because of who you are when you're finally still. So if it's draining you, let it go. If you're constantly convincing them, stop talking. If you're always doing just to be enough, stop. Breathe. Because you're not here to earn love. You're here to receive it. Fully, freely, without fear. Say it with me. I don't force love. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And stay with me. Because next, we're stepping into power. You've done the chasing. Now it's time to pause and see what stays. What comes toward you when you stop running. Let's go. Number 7. Pull back and watch what stays. Sometimes the only way to see someone's intention is to stop chasing. Let's flip the script, my friends. For once, stop being the one who checks in first. Stop being the emotional glue that holds everything together. Stop fixing the energy every time it shifts. Just pause and watch. Because stillness is powerful. It shows you what effort can't. It reveals what talking over constantly has hidden. The ones who value you, they'll notice your pause. They'll move toward you, not because you pushed, but because they care. But the ones who only stayed because you kept the fire burning, they'll let it go out. They'll disappear into the silence they never planned to fill themselves. And that hurts. But it also sets you free. You've been holding on so tightly, hoping they'd match your energy. Now's the moment you let go and see what rises to meet you. Say it with me. Stillness reveals truth. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And stay with me, because what's coming next? It's the shift that changes everything. We're about to talk about the one move that frees your soul, letting go of control and letting in clarity. Let's go. Number 8. Let go of control. Let in clarity. You're not being abandoned. You're being redirected back to yourself. Let that one settle deep, my friends, because what feels like loss on the surface is often protection in disguise. That person pulling away, that unanswered text, that confusing energy, it's not always a rejection of your worth. It's a redirection of your focus. This isn't about blaming yourself. This is about freeing yourself. Yes, you've made mistakes. You've over-explained. You've overgiven. You stayed when you should have left. You ignored red flags. You gave your all to people who weren't ready, and you tried to hold it all together with love and effort. But here's the shift. Now you know better. And that awareness? That's your power. You don't need to beg for a seat at someone's table to prove you're worthy of love. You just need to stop trying to control the outcome. That's what kept you stuck. The fantasy, the fear, the belief that if you just said the right thing, did the right thing, gave enough, it would finally work. But real love isn't built on control. It's built on clarity. And clarity comes when you return to your center, when you stop looking outside yourself for proof that you're lovable, when you stop gripping outcomes so tightly that you lose your peace in the process. Hey folks, imagine you're holding a bird in your hands. You love it. You want it to stay. But you grip it too tightly, out of fear it might fly away. And in doing so, you crush it. But if you open your hand, it might fly, or it might stay. But either way, you've honored its freedom and your own. That's what letting go feels like. Not weakness, not indifference, but trust. Trusting that what's real won't run. Trusting that your worth doesn't depend on how tightly you hold on. Trusting that you are already whole, no outcome needed. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You've been chasing connection when what your soul really needed was alignment. Connection can come from desperation. But alignment, that's peace. That's mutual. That's honest. That's real. And here's the beauty of letting go. When you find peace in your solitude, you become magnetic to what's meant for you. You no longer chase what's unsure. You no longer force what feels off. You simply are. And that version of you, that's powerful. So say it with me. I am no longer chasing connection. I am attracting alignment. Write it in the comments. Let it sink in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And you made it to the end, my friends, and that means you're not just healing, you're transforming. You're no longer chasing love that drains you. You're attracting peace that builds you. So protect your energy, honor your worth, and remember this. Real love doesn't need to be forced. It flows. If this message spoke to your soul, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. I will see you in the next video.